Yo, Scrawny with the skinny. Back for Fantasyland and back to the middle of the pack. Top 58% finish. After the whole 2% finish last week, I was in the matrix, bro. I thought I had this one all figured out, but I wrote off FaZe a little too hard. The double Fnatic pick didn't pay off. Dexter finished like the 5th or 6th lowest rated player of all of Pro League. Luckily for me, I hit a bunch of boosters on him, so that gave me 45 points across the board. Simple beat up FaZe in the last match of the group. That definitely helped. Alexi overperformed. Tatsunito and Apex didn't even make playoffs. It was a rough one. But all things considered, I still got my 4 points. And those 4 points put me in 5th. I was 2nd after last week behind Prof. I have fallen down the leaderboard ever so slightly, but goddamn is this season tight. We're about halfway through the season, 8 events in. My calendar has 8 more events in the 22-bet league. Some could get added as time goes on, but it seems like that's going to be that. And yeah, so stay focused, folks. All right, we're halfway there. Prof's hanging on for dear life. 5 points between 1st and 5th. But behind us, man, things are still tight. Like, shout out Machine holding on. Maui Snake having his best season ever. Vince is still bouncing back after a couple horrible drafts. Alan Hender in the top 10. Last season, Alan Hender was barely on the leaderboard. And now this guy's in top 10. So keep it up, gang. Look at this UK pack rising through the ranks, coming up and stepping up for the occasion. ESL Pro League Group D, the last group. Finally, we will be rid of this format with padding points, left, right, center, up, and down. Too many padding points. Can't wait to get into the playoffs and get past Pro League. I hate the fact that we've got 4 weeks of this. It just seems so repetitive. I'm saying the same shit every damn video. But it'll be worth it. Playoffs will be fun. And I'm going to Malta for the playoffs, so I'll see you guys there on broadcast. Here's how I think this one goes, all right? Straight off the bat, I think G2 heavy favorites for this. I think Cloud9 still haven't shown us their full potential, but they've got really successful pieces. I personally rate Virtus.pro pretty high in general. I called the win for them over FaZe back at Gamers 8. I like this edition of Virtus.pro. I think that Norbert has come back and been better. I think that Mir brings something special to this team, even if it's at the sacrifice of a player. We'll get there in a second. But all in all, I'm anticipating G2, Virtus.pro, Cloud9 as the 3 real success stories of this group. To me, 9 in complexity, tough to call the difference, so let's just go through the bracket, all right? Cloud9 beat Eternal Fire. EF has played a lot of Pro Leagues, and their most recent LAN was really bad. But every time they come to Pro League, we think, maybe Xanter. No, they never make it to playoffs. They always fall short, and I'm just going to write them off again until they prove me otherwise. C9 versus 9. I think 9 will play pretty well versus Complexity. Unless Elige has some superstar performance, I think Complexity as a whole have looked worse with Elige, even though he as an individual looks good. It's the sacrifice of Complexity's unit for Elige's individuals, and that is not a winning formula in my mind. I give that to 9. VP versus Liquid is Virtus.pro for me, even if Patsy was in the server, but the fact that Daps is going to be there makes VP look very appealing to open that up, and LinVision don't stand a chance. So G2 versus Virtus.pro, I think is a very interesting game. I think that VP could make Hooksy sweat a little bit. I think that James can call a good game here, but it is going to come down to the individuals because in terms of star power, G2 have them covered, all right? NiKo is fantastic. I mean, he looks untouchable. Hunter's had a good resurgence in form. JKS just had a really bad event in Riyadh, but I don't expect him to be that bad 2 events in a row. And I think that, Hooksy's a good caller straight up. He can go tit for tat with James, and that could be a really exciting matchup. 9 versus Cloud9 could also be a low-key banger. I think that 9 and Cloud9 have a really fun head-to-head. And with Cloud9 not looking as imperfect as they could be, we have to keep an eye on this, right? So this could end up being 9 versus G2 or VP versus Cloud9. Or most likely, obviously, is just C9 versus G2 in the upper final, where I give it to G2. I think the most likely winner of the upper final and straight to the semis of playoffs, it's gotta be G2 here. All right, so G2, the safest bet. You better draft 2 G2 players. But the fun thing about this draft is the combination of G2 players is very exciting. And here's why, okay? Because NiKo and JKS, all right? That right there, $435,000. Or Hunter and Monacy, for $234,000. All right, that's pretty fun. Or NiKo and Hooksy. Yeah, that's right. That's just a little bit more than 400K. So this is actually one of the cheaper options. And Hooksy is the #1 picked player of all of this group. So if everybody goes down because of Hooksy, you don't actually sink alone. All right. So there's some fun to be had here in this combination. And JKS is a very reasonable 203. You know, I think if he was sitting 210, that'd be super fair. In these kinds of formats, these kinds of events, JKS doesn't really get active. He's not the kind of person who's gonna break a sweat over a pro league game. I feel like, you know, if this is a Cologne playoffs, if this is Katowice playoffs, if this is a stage game, JKS becomes more appealing to me. But I'm looking for the aggressive guys who are hunting ratings like Monesi, NiKo, and more often, Hunter. So double G2, right? Now I like this idea right now of not picking Hooksy simply because everybody has him. If everybody has him and Hooksy plays poorly, significantly worse than the rest of G2, then not having him is going to get you that extra little bit forward, that extra 10 to 20%, you know, finish that could really get us some nice points. So my strategy, my out of the gate opening move here is going to be to avoid Hooksy but still double G2. Now that takes NiKo off the table straight up, unless you pair him with JKS and get cheap elsewhere. So what I like, okay, right here, right now, is Hunter at 215, all right? You want a little Kovac blood in your draft, and because of his price tag, JKS, that opens up possibilities elsewhere. Now, I think that Monesi and NiKo could very well be the two highest rated players of this group, but Monesi sometimes leaves rating on the table for guys like Hunter to scoop up, and JKS should outperform Hooksy. Now, what scares me is back at Gamers 8, Hooksy actually finished the event with a higher rating than JKS, but I think that is an anomaly of a performance for JKS. He's had a good amount of time off. They haven't played many officials. He's going to bounce into this. They've been watching Pro League. They've been at home practicing. I saw all 5 players in Serbia on a boot camp, yada, 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 yada. So Hunter and JKS are my 2 G2 picks to open up this conversation. Me personally, I'm afraid of this Cloud9 struggle, okay? It sketches me out. It really does. And I think that, you know, if you're not going Shiro, your next best bet is going to be Perfecto. Electronic has been kind of bogged down by the in-game leadership. Axile hasn't proven to us yet that he is going to have his form that we saw with Nafany under the flag of Electronic. And Hobbit, I love him as a person, but when the going gets tough, Hobbit becomes this like sacrificial lamb for Cloud9 that's going to try to do everything to make wins happen. And Hobbit, more often than not, will end up bombing his performance for the attempt at a win. Honorable, of course. The win is what's most important. But in fantasy, you know, you can't take that into account. It literally becomes about rating. So I'm sorry, Hobbit. I love the idea, but I don't like the risk. So right away in my first draft, I'm actually not touching Cloud9, and I'm going to scroll down to Virtus Pro instead. That's right, a VP picker right here, right now, okay? I just bit the bullet with Fnatic because they didn't outperform FaZe, right? And you can draw this comparison right now, right? I went for Mouse instead of Heroic, that one worked. I went for Fnatic instead of FaZe, that time it didn't. Oh, Connor, you're going to pick the lesser team, the underdog again. But I think that VP are the better team than Cloud9 in terms of team play, in terms of cohesion, and they're on the same side as G2, which means G2 or Virtus Pro will make it through as the winner of that side of the bracket to get in to 3 rounds of padding point. It will be G2 or Virtus Pro. And if VP pick up that upset, I want in on it. All right? Got me? You read? So when we look at Virtus Pro, I want you guys to check out these stats, all right? Because you know what Jane brings to the table. He's going to save ops. And Fame and Flit have become, you know, the synonymous duo, the riflers of VP. But Mir is the new guy on the block, okay? I'm taking Fame because he outperforms Flit pretty frequently. He was the highest rated player for Virtus Pro back at Gamers 8 when they caused those upset. And just in general, Fame is a crazy headshot machine. I mean that just quite literally. His ability to get picks every round, whether they win those rounds or not, seems so impressive. But at the same time, he also activates the headshot machine role like nobody else. So I'm taking Fame and I'm taking Mir. All right. These are my 4 out of the gate: Hunter, JKS, Fame, and Mir. And I'm going to bring up some numbers. Here you have, this is LAN in the last 3 months, all right? This is what's most notable. Fame across this, straight up 1.14 rating, doesn't matter who his opponents are. This is 6 maps to 17 maps. Fame is the consistency of Virtus Pro. So if you put any stock in VP at all, I think Fame is the inclusion you have to have at 209,000. Mir, okay, the newest rifler, because Norbert's been there before. Pretty solid versus better opposition. Tapers off a little bit, but still the second highest rated player for VP in the last 3 months. He has been put into this system to succeed, all right? He is being given a lot of room and attention and responsibility, and that comes at the cost of who I used to always fall in love with when it came to fantasy, Flit. Flit's fallen out. Flit, I feel, is not being given the same amount of space, the same amount of importance, and for that reason, I'm going to take Mir for this one personally. I'm taking Mir over top of Flit to save a few $1,000s, and the warning of this time is Jame. My friends, Jame is not who he used to be. The top teams have figured him out, and he has fallen off versus them. He gets the most rating out of everybody barring Fame when it comes to lesser opposition, because those players shit their pants when they play versus Jame. But the top dogs, the G2s, the Cloud9s, those guys, to me, have figured Jame out enough that I'm going to avoid him, especially as he has $215,000 price tag for fantasy. And the reason being, if you put on online games, boom, look at those numbers fly. They get increased ever so incrementally, and he's overinflated at the moment. It's not worth the risk. All right. So, Hunter, JKS, Fame, and Mir. This is quite a bit of money in Virtus Pro, but I have A, faith in them, and B, if VP beat G2 and get into that upper group, all of a sudden, you're going to want the top players of Virtus Pro, which will be these two. All right? There will be future decisions or other rosters with variation. And then last but not least, we go NiKo. I think that it's a weird economy for this fantasy. Excuse me, I have hiccups. Weird economy now. You can go NiKo, you can go Major. And I'm going to take NiKo. I think that NiKo, his stats, he's like just shy of a 1.0 rating right now versus LAN. But this guy has actually showed improvement. Go look at his statistics 6 months ago, from 3 months ago to the last month. NiKo is somebody who has been playing versus Tier 1 Counter-Strike now for so long, after a year of being kind of in that top 20 conversation, that he is benefiting from it, and he is putting forth better individual performances, even than some, of the usual suspects like Kylar. NiKo can outdo him at times. So, to me, he is the affordability to have a gold Hunter and 3 silver players between G2 and VP. Now, obviously, this draft does not include any Cloud9, and that could end up costing me. But this is the lineup I put forth. All right. My rolls are out of whack. I'm sorry. Support for JKS, as always, 44 activation on big, 47 on small, and then Fame should be headshot machine, 43 and 39. I put Hunter on eco-friendly. You could put him on multi-fragger if you want, but I find he kind of gets outdone by Monacy and by NiKo, and so throw him on the SMGs, watch him farm. Solid activation for all of these, 32, 44, 43, leader on Mir because he just doesn't have quite a specialty role. And then noob on NiKo, you've got to. Everybody's sitting like 35 to 40 or more activation on these roles should set it up nicely. But the alternative drafts, okay? I'm trying something different with the different drafts. We're going to incrementally change the roster. Sometimes I'm like, here is VP, here is Cloud9. I'm just going to show slight variation in the possibilities of all this, all right? Here's my next draft. Now remember, Hunter and Monacy can be switched out for NiKo and JKS. You can get either combination. And what this does is it puts more money in G2 because, again, I'm trying to go for G2 over VP in this case, right? And I really like this draft. There's a 50-50 chance that I switch out to this one because it's more stock in G2, right? My original draft, I'm trying to sell you on this whole Fame and Mir, new VP combo at the expense of like, will JKS perform? But if you throw Monacy in JKS's shoes and you get Norbert instead of Fame, suddenly This to me is a very appealing roster. Double gold player for G2, thinking about the fact all they have to do is beat Leon Vision, which is a gimme, and then beat a Virtus Pro, which is very possible, and then their most challenging opposition for their top game is going to be a Cloud9 who is yet to show us that they're actually a top 5 team. Come on. They could do this. And if you have Hunter and Monacy, then you don't have that potential threat of JKS having back-to-back bad events or just letting the rating go to everybody else like Hunter and Monacy. The weird thing with the price tags is that if, I'm not talking about Hooksy, one, because the strategy is avoid Hooksy at all costs to get past all the teams that draft him. And two, I think that if you take NiKo and Hooksy, for example, you free up like $10,000, but I'm sure if you've tried to kind of spend all your money this week, it's one of those fantasy events where you can't quite spend it all. And you're going to end up with like $8,000, $9,000 spare in all of these kinds of formulas I'm going for. And so, just don't think about that, all right? Don't think about, I have this much money left, this can't be a good team. My second best ever draft ever was back for the Blast, I think, Challengers stage, Paris Major, when I had like $7,000 left on my Demka draft, but I believed in Demka because it all made sense to me. And so that's why I know you want to spend all $1 million and it feels like you're leaving money on the table, which means leaving rating out there, but it doesn't always boil down to that. Try to get over that mental barrier and then suddenly you'll have a good event that'll click and you'll never have to worry about that thought again. So Hunter, Monacy, Mir, Norbert, Mino. Norbert's pretty unproven versus the better teams right now. He's been out of competition versus top 10, top 15 teams on LAN in the last 3-6 months. But Mir should still lock it down for VP. And what we're really going here is for like, if G2 just dominate, then Hunter and Monacy are your keys. Again, a slight variation. Hunter, JKS, Mir, Perfecto. Now I'm touching Cloud9, all right? Because I'm not thinking Cloud9 are going to bomb out of this group. In fact, Cloud9 could end up doing very well. And it is beyond Shiro that we find Perfecto, all right? These are stats on LAN in the last 3 months. So these 3 months include, of course, the new Cloud9. Now, there is an asterisk on this. Axile has only played 6 maps compared to everybody else's 17 because Buster was a stand-in for 11. But Buster and Axile have about the same stats. Crazy. Shiro, 1.21 rating on LAN. When he hits LAN, he hits hard. And it's Perfecto who has outperformed Hobbit, as we see Electronics numbers still staying low because he's trying to get his hands on the reins of this new, very ambitious and very promising roster. So to me, if you're going to include any Cloud9, I couldn't find a good combination of 2 Cloud9 players. I already went through those reasons why. But if you want to include anybody, right, to me, it is Perfecto. Mino is the key for affordability, and JKS is here yet again to make sure that we don't have to go into that Hooksy pick. Does Hooksy outperform JKS again? Odds are not, all right? And JKS could end up getting a great one. I wish we had money for Monacy over Hunter. I would honestly prefer that. But this to me is still an excellent one where we're not putting all of our money on VP. We're not putting all of our money on Cloud9 because those are the iffies, and it's still all about the double G2. This roster, I enjoy. This roster, I really like, although maybe a bit too heavy on G2. What's nice with this, of course, is that if Cloud9 end up overperforming beyond my expectations, most people have Perfecto and Electronic at the moment, and that will let me stay close to them while still banking on Mir doing some heavy damage. But if Mino truly flops, then honestly, top 50 is probably all we're going to get. So here we are for now. Gith Yankee, because I've been playing a shit ton of Baldur's Gate. It is Hunter, JKS, Fame, Mir, Mino. But keep an eye on my Twitter, because I'm probably going to switch to this. Or this. Or maybe I stay. We'll find out. Best of luck out there, guys. Thank you for watching. Drop a comment. Give me a like. And make sure you come back, because Pro League Playoffs is going to be the best video. That one, I can't wait to get into it. It's such a sick format once Pro League Playoffs actually starts. Plus, I'll be in Malta. Bye.